And you found us. Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil, I'm up to you. Let me take my glasses off so I can see you. Hey, welcome to Happy Massive Consumption Weekend. It begins the Friday after, of course. I didn't know what to call it. Post Thanksgiving, I did a show yesterday during Thanksgiving, which was actually before the meal. And then I didn't, I was too wiped out. Isn't that the truth? I mean, after you eat as much as you can, and you're making sure you stuff every little inch of your consumptive insides, and there's just no more. It's full, no mas, right? And then you just have to go supine. Is that supine or prone? It's supine. And you just have to say that's it, and then you cool out for about a couple hours, and then you say, okay, now where's that cheesecake you said you had? So that was the kind of vegan, and it's vegan. That just goes to show you there's no virtue signaling. Even vegans are guilty of that kind of massive consumption that just begins, with Black Friday and then Saturday and Cyber Monday coming up. It's the part of the massive consumption period, and I feel bad about it. I mean, there are times when I feel like, okay, I'm at that point where I'm not eating as much, in this cycle. I'm in the downtime. Is that no, I'm not going to eat anymore. I'm not. I'm not because I have enough. I have enough, and that's how you build up the resistance. So you can say no to other temptations of this massive consumption weekend. You say no, I don't want to. I got enough. Do I need another digital this? Do I need another gizmo? I'm good. I'm good. You got to say I'm good, and then you can beat this thing. You can beat this thing. Anyway, welcome to my takeout, Emil Amok's takeout. My takes on all things considerable. We're here uh, I got a new T-shirt here. The Dork Forest is a podcast I was on a couple weeks ago. Jackie Cation has done this since 2006. That's a lot of dork forestry that she's managed to accomplish. She asked me to come on to talk about American Filipino history, and I did. I talked about it for an hour. Catch it, just put down Dork Forest, and then Emil Amok or Emil Guillermo. It's an interesting show. If you don't know anything about Filipino American history, and chances are you know something because you're here. This show is subtitled WDAAAT. What does an Asian American think that includes Filipino? And you would know something about Philippine history, American Filipino history. As I shared the other night at the Deaf Puppy Comedy Club in Manteca, I said, I'm sorry for you guys, for that we don't take Filipino American history seriously because if we did, then you wouldn't be eating dried white meat turkey on Thanksgiving Day. We'd be having an official Filipino celebration on Thanksgiving because, and this is what they don't know, who came first, the Filipinos or the Pilgrims? Of course, Filipinos. The Filipinos? No, not the Pilgrims, Uncle Emil? No, not the Pilgrims. They're slackers. They came like 33 years later, 1620. The Filipinos were first. On the other coast that no one took seriously, Morro Bay, California, what is now Morro Bay, but they were the first. And sure, they were like deckhands for Spain, but the Filipinos stepped foot first in North America, right here, California. They engaged with the Indians, not in a nice way. I mean, I think one Filipino died, shed blood, but it was Asian, the first Asians, Filipinos. Okay, let's just keep it Filipino. First Filipinos to step foot in North America, October 18th, 1587. And so, 20 years before the Pilgrims, you want to eat that dried white meat? When you can have roasted, succulent Filipino pig Well, it's not necessarily Filipino. It's what Filipinos eat. Pig. Except the vegan one. And there I'm virtue signaling. I'm saying, no, I don't eat the vegan. I go vegan. I don't eat the pig. But, I think of the pig there, and I'm not going to like lord it on people who want to have pig. And of course, there are the two table Filipinos out there who have a turkey and a pig. It's like turkey on one side, pig on the other. They're dueling each other on Thanksgiving, and in between is like the dinaguan, the chopped meat, and the lumpia, and all the other stuff. That's Filipino Thanksgiving. Except in my house, because half. I'm full Filipino, but my wife is white, and so we have a vegan Thanksgiving, and we celebrate it with our family, and we have vegan roast and mashed potatoes. Oh, it was great. Vegan roast mashed potatoes. And I got chided for this. I'm sorry. I'm a canned cranberry guy. Canned cranberries. Canned. Got to see the ribs of the can on the cranberries, and that shows that those canned cranberries were effective. I love the jellied canned cranberries because those are the people's cranberries. They are the people's cranberries. They're great. Love them. And so that with the vegan roast from, they're not sponsors. I paid for it full in full. Uh, it's from the butcher's son in Berkeley. Great, great stuff. But here's the thing, you go there and pick it up, and if you want to know why people don't like wokeness, you got to go to a place like Butcher's Son. And if you go there, because I don't live in Berkeley, but I just go in there as a regular person going in to get my Thanksgiving meal. And if you go there and you go in there and the wokeness just sort of like overwhelms you, sort of like garlic, the taste of garlic. I don't mind garlic and I don't mind wokeness, but I imagine that some people out there are kind of sensitive. A lot of people in America are sensitive to wokeness. They, oh, wokeness. I hardly go through life to sleep. So, wokeness. I don't want wokeness. But there are people like that, you know. And in fact, even if you're not one of those types, you should just go there to get some empathy for the people who are anti woke. You say, okay, I get it, I get it. We could tone it down a bit, a little less garlic, a little less garlic. Everyone will be happy. But that's sort of anyway. I went there and got my vegan roast. It was great. The stuffing is great. The vegan roast is great. We make our own brown gravy, vegan gravy. So it was a good meal. You get enough to eat, and then you just collapse, and then you say, "Where's the lazy boy? Where's the lazy boy?" We got a fake lazy boy. That's a lazy boy that sometimes has to do some real work, but it's definitely lazy reclining. And so it took a while, and then once the food fog lifts, then you say, "Hey, where's the cheesecake?" And then you get the cheesecake. Vegan cheesecake. Vegan cheesecake. Anyway, so I hope you had a good meal. Um, it was so good that we had it again for breakfast, and that we repeated. Except, when every meal is a repeat of that big meal, and then you go through this period where it's because unless you're cooking each time it's leftovers, right? So it's a little less food, a little less food, and this is how you wean. It's sort of like titrating, off some kind of drug. You know, oh, titration. Got some experience with that. Huh? No, I just know that. I just know that. So it's like, this is how you wean yourself off the holiday meal, and then by the time you're done, it's Monday, and then get ready again for the holiday dinner around Christmas. I mean, that's how we do it, right? That's how we do it in America from Thanksgiving to December 25th. Good friend of mine had his daughter had a baby. Welcome to young Wesley. Looking pretty good. Was like I said, I got this in the mail today. There's mail delivery today. So the Dork Forest, Jackie Cation's podcast. She's been doing it since 2006. Like I said, she was very nice to have me on. And the reason why she had me on is because like no one knows about Filipino American history. They don't. They just don't know anything about Filipino American history. So I talk about. I don't get into the 1587 stuff. I'm saving it for an encore. I'm saving it for hey, why don't you come on and talk about that 1587 stuff again? No, yeah, I can't. No, I talk about the other stuff. 1899, the war, the insurrection, the what they call the what's really the Philippine American War, but they call it the Philippine insurrection. The Malolos Republic, established by the Philippines, and then how the Philippines were the colony, the first colony. So I go into all that, and not a whole lot of people know that. They don't know that. They don't know that history. Anyway, look at the Dork Forest and my name, Emil Guillermo or Emil, and came out around the first of the month, the first of December. It was fun, and it's a great podcast to get into all the little dorkdoms of people that she has on. And I guess Filipino American history is my dorkdom. It is. It is. I mean, I'm stuck with it. I'm stuck with it. And that's why we're going to talk about Peter Jamero later today. I was going to have Dan Gonzalez on with me, but I don't want to impose on people who are friends of mine who come on and take part in this, and their time is theirs, and so I thought I'd let Dan relax and have his mezcal, and then I'll just do the solo. Um, I do want to mention why some people say, oh, that's unique post Thanksgiving garden, camo like a hunter. No, it's camo because it's a reminder that when I wear camo, it's a bit redundant when I'm already invisible. But no, I just like this jacket, and it's very light, and to tell you the truth, it holds my stomach in after a big meal. It just fertilizes the whole wardrobe thing. Anyway, let's see. Happy massive consumption weekend. So now, are you Black Fridaying it? I just figured if there's something I like, I buy it. And then when people say, what can we get for you? I got it all. You don't have to get anything for me. Because I just go ahead and I buy whatever I want. And small things, not like really big things. And sometimes I miss. Like I bought these earbuds. Like I don't need another set of earbuds, but you tend to lose them. And then when you lose them, or you think you lose them, you panic and buy another set and say, "Oh darn it! I found the ones I lost." But this one, I thought, "Oh, I buy these. I might return them. They're okay. They were on sale, of course, 50% off. Okay, okay." And then but I bought this other thing with an adjunct to them, which was an earbud like ear holder, so you don't lose them, so they don't fall out. And you put them on top of the earbud, and they're supposed to be made for this special earbud. And of course, it's crap. It doesn't work. $10, right? And then I guess you're supposing you're not going to go after your 10. I am going after my $10. I'm going after my 10. So anyway, so I did a lot of I did some, not a lot of for the big items. I mean, if someone wanted something bigger, it's on sale. And on sale, the concept of on sale is ridiculous, right? We go into this happy, massive consumption weekend sort of on the skies. Oh, corporate America is going to give us all these big discounts on things we want, and instead of getting like an 80% profit, they're only going to give us like a, they're only going to expect a 40% profit today. We should be so lucky. I mean, who says those capitalists are nice? Once a year, they say, oh, and maybe it's not a 75 or 85% profit. Maybe sometimes it's like 120 or maybe 200% profit. Well, sometimes it's 3x or 4. The greedy one's 10x, and they're giving you 10%. So I was actually trying to be nice to say, oh, they're only taking a 75% profit and stuff. No, they're taking like 100, 200, 300% profit ordinarily. That's how really diabolical they are. And they said, I think we could afford to give them 50%. Oh, 50%. I mean, instead of taking a 300 or 400% profit, you're only taking a 200% profit? Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See, that's how it works. Uh, People in the household are watching this thing called Arcane on Netflix, and I wanted, well, I'd rather like read a book of poetry of my friend Ishmael Reed, the Black Hole Thing. Great poetry. He's known for other things, like his plays. And his wife, Carla Blank, just wrote a book of essays, A Jew of Ramallah, and other essays, out there by Baraka Press. You might hear on Pacifica, KPFA News, KPFA Radio, Carla Blank. But I also am reading Ishmael's plays, and I'll read some of his plays a little bit. But it's something. Arcane, this thing on Netflix, is something because I asked one of the ones watching it, what's it about? It's animated, which I didn't understand at first, but now I get it. You can get away with things in animation, although it takes a hell of a long time to understand the process. Single frame to have, but you get to do different things that you wouldn't do in live action. So it's ultra fantastical, and it's also based on a video game, which is all I needed to know to understand that. Maybe I wouldn't like it as much, but I asked someone who's partaking and watching it, well, what's it about? He said, basically class warfare, which, hey, I can get into that. I mean, that's what life is like in America now, right? Anyway, Ishmael, Ishmael Reed, his poem. He's known for being a novelist and playwright. This is a poem called The Banishment. We don't want you here. Your crops grow better than ours. We don't want you here. You're not one of our kind. We'll drive you we'll drive you out as though you were never here. Your name, family, and history will make them all disappear. We don't want you here. You look too good on Sunday. We don't want you here. You work too hard on Monday. We don't want you here. Your children are learning in school. We don't want you here. Why aren't they behind the mule? We don't want you here. Your women dress so fine. We don't want you here. Your gain means our decline. Why aren't your men stooped and bent the way they should be? They walk about town as though they were free. We don't want you here. Go away and never return. We don't want you here. Your home, farm, churches will burn. We don't want you here. The banishment. And this is the thing about Ishmael Reed's poetry. When you read it, you can hear, if you know the history of that kind of rhetoric, it extends to the Asians in the early or the late 19th century, 1890s, exclusion laws, extended to the Filipinos, extended to Asians, extended to Japanese Americans, of course African Americans, Latino Americans, or Latino, Mexicans specifically. And because of the laws that allow for birthright citizenship, if you have a baby here in American soil, your baby, your family member is an American citizen by constitutional fiat, 14th Amendment. That's what the Republicans are trying to get rid of. So you see a poem like that is full of all of those, for me, because I know the history, full of those images, and it just explodes. And it's not even the poem that I would single out as either the best. I mean, there's just no write so many different poems. Mostly, a lot about music and about race, but that poem I discovered just because I was flipping through the book. I mean, I first got the book a couple years ago, and I was actually flipping through it more intently the last couple of weeks because I was named poet laureate of my little town here in the Central Valley, which is an honor to be named the first poet laureate. Doesn't mean that I had to be like the only qualification besides being a writer. Well, you didn't even have to be a writer, but I am a writer, essayist. I'm not an novelist, but an essayist. I write some poetry, but I'm not known as a poet. You got to love poetry, and I didn't realize how much I love poetry. But I have a base of knowledge about poetry that dates back to high school and college. And so it's like I realize how little about poetry is around in the world, so that no one ever says, "Oh, I know that." I mean, it used to be a part of our education, but who knows where education is now? Trump education. But I thank my great English teachers in public school. Flossie Wu is chief among them. To expose me to Shakespeare's sonnets, and to Beowulf, and to Chaucer, and to the rhyme of the ancient Americans, Keats, the Romantic poets, and then to just give me a firm grounding in all of poetry, so that I can get to the modern day, and I can see what the modernists are doing. Of course, MTSL screwed everything up. Thank goodness for Rod McCune. And no, I mean the thing about poetry is it's all over. Now people don't realize this is a lyrical song, form of poetry, a popular thing. And I now recall now when I was in a PBS thing, and my teacher asked me, was it right for Bob Dylan to get the Nobel laureate in poetry? And some people thought, oh yeah, that popularizes poetry. It helps poetry. And then another person said, oh no, it's not poetry. We have to go back to the tradition, and I'm sort of in the middle. I actually argued that it was good for Dylan to do that because people could see that poetry is everywhere. Poetry is in your diction, your choices, not just the medium. Anyway, since I was named poet laureate of my small little town, I feel a responsibility to talk about poetry and to share my my affection. I won't call it love of poetry because that would mean that I would have bonds of poetry that I've written myself. But it's a strong affection, and it's a strong appreciation for poetry, and a willingness to share it with others, and to write poetry. I do write poetry. The stanza is called I learned this the other day. It means house. And when you create a poem, it is sort of like an architecture of words and feelings and sounds, and creating little rooms in those word architecture that you build. And there's just something about um, poetry and people's time span and time commitment that just makes sense now more than ever. If you're going to read literature, and some people, I mean, not all novels are literature, but if you're not going to read the great ones, there is time to read great poetry as well as the modern. And I'm not trying to be a poetry snob. I'm just saying the gift or the greatness of poetry is that you can see poetry everywhere, the poetry in all things, even the small forgotten such about town. That does not revere literacy quite the same way as it should, which is why it's important, one of the important things you can do. I think, I think, we'll see. I'll write some poems, read some poems. That's all on the agenda. But it means I read more poetry now than I do, well, not more than any other thing, but I read it a lot more. And I feel good because here's one thing I picked up. Here's one phrase. Poetry may not change the world, but it may change you. I believe that. I believe that. All right, so I'm going to talk about Peter Chamorro. Peter is a Filipino American that died in music before Thanksgiving. He was 94. He was honored in the Filipino American community. And, he was a bureaucrat throughout his life, but what makes him extraordinary is the circumstances of his life. He was a Filipino American, born in the United States, but he was the son of a Filipino immigrant who came here as a colonized Filipino. Philippines was colonized. They came to America. They were free to come here. They couldn't be a citizen. They were called nationals. They couldn't own land. They couldn't vote. They couldn't intermarry. The smart ones brought their own wives from the Philippines, the Chimeras. They came over. They were married. They had a family. Peter, her, sister. They lived in the valley. And they were labor camps. They ran labor camps. There was a big ag interest in the valley. So they had a kind of leg up, but they were part of that movement of Filipinos. And Peter and his brother Herb and his sisters were Filipino Americans born here, that first wave. And so when we say there was a lost generation, as we often say about a Filipino American history, lineage, that they came in the 20s, and so many, like my father, came in the 20s and couldn't intermarry. There weren't enough Filipinos, Filipina women to match with Filipino men. So there was a lot of many bachelor societies around Filipino community. There just weren't any women. And the ability to have a Filipino family was really greatly, greatly diminished. Which means what a thing to have a Filipino family, you know, that would include Peter and his brothers and sisters. They were the missing Filipino generation. And they went out into the world. His brother Herb went to UCLA. He was an MSW. his sisters are all professional. But it was Peter who was the real success story. Peter got to he got into the government work. He was a top level bureaucrat. And when I was first aware of Peter Chimero, I was in Washington D.C. and Peter was working with different departments of the government. And one of the rising, one of the only Filipinos who did not speak with an accent, who were American born, who represented what I was, an American born, but I was like a generation, really a generation away from Peter. Because my father came in the 20s, but he wasn't able to have a family for the 50s. So we're both ends of this massive lost generation because we're the generation no one really knows about. Oh, you're Filipino? You sound that way. You're Filipino? Yeah, because we were told to be America. We were told to, well, Filipinos love skin whitening. And I remember my mom, telling me, not to wear short sleeve shirts. Ho ho ho! Then all your arms are black when you're out in the sun. And she didn't want me to play out in the sun, just like people didn't want to go out and work. They didn't want to work in the field. I don't know if that's why my dad chose not to work in the field and to work in the kitchen instead, because the kitchens were inside. There was no sun. Oh, he wouldn't turn, but he would turn like he would just look normal. He looked white. Is that it? Anyway, Peter was out there. Well, he was his family ran the labor camp, and he had an education. And you could see my podcast with Peter, my conversation, 2-hour podcast on Emil Amok's Takeout, wherever you podcast. I did it a couple of years ago. And it was when I talked to Peter that I realized that the real problem I had was being a Filipino born American, and living in America, and being treated like the immigrant. And when he said that to me, it's like the light bulb went on. Oh, that's my problem. That's the problem with my lost generation. And Peter, in that conversation, got to see them. We weren't treated. The discrimination was worse because my father was the colonized immigrant and he was lucky to be treated anyway. I was the American born here. And I never got people to take that credibly that I was the American born here. I should be treated like an American, not like my father. But I was treated like him. And that, as they say, Robert Frost would say, has made all the difference. So I mentioned Peter today because the Philippine American National Historical Society is having a group out based in Virginia Beach is having a discussion, and they're going to talk about significant things that happened in 2024 in Filipino American history. And frankly, the passing of another member of that lost generation, I think, is worth mentioning as a significant moment in Filipino American history. Because these people led their lives as they were as participatory as they were allowed. Were they full participants? Like I said, to the degree that they were allowed. Were they? Did they? Did they feel fulfilled? I don't know, but every time I talked to Peter, he had gone back to Livingston and has been living there since his time. And I think that there's just something about being fulfilled when you go back home, being blessed back home. So I later on I would talk to the Bronze people, but I wanted people in this audience to know what I was going to say, or who knew Peter or know Peter, or didn't know, but are curious. What are the significant 2024 historical things about Filipinos in America? I think the passing of one of the few born, because remember the Filipino American population doesn't begin to burgeon until 1965 with the Immigration Act of 1965 that allowed Filipinos to come in, and when the Immigration Act ended all the racist quotas that put a zero quota on Filipino immigration for decades, even after having, after being allowed to come in because they were colonized. 1965, that law, when it ended the quotas and opened the gates, that's when the Filipino American community really was able to develop. And before then, it was just a microcosm. So I remember Peter and his passing as an important event. It's got to be. It's got to be an important event in Filipino American history in 2024. The other thing I want to know is in terms of Filipino American history, because this will have an impact on all Filipinos, people of color, and that is the 2024 election. I mean, we talk about, or Kamala Harris talked about not going back, and that is the consequence of this election of her opponent, Donald Trump. We are going back. And how far are we going back? I mean, people say, we're going back 2024, going back to 2010, 2000. Okay, 1990, 1965. Well, that would be bad. Because that's like going back to the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, all the breakthroughs for people of color. But no, we're going back further. We're going back 100 years. 1924. 1924. The original Immigration Act that established quotas on all boards, including Europe. They got 2%. But Asian countries, 0%. And that was the beginning of a kind of isolationism, a kind of anti people of color kind of attitude. Oh, I mean, look, we've been through slavery, right? And then slavery was illegal, but here we were in 1924, we still had problems with all these new people coming in. And the blacks were still not fully, in 1924, they were not, they were still fighting for their civil rights. So we're going back to the 20s. We're 2024, we're going back easily 100 years, 1920s. And that is really a consequence of the vote that happened November 5th, 2024. And it also was helped. The victory came because people of color were only looking as far as the grocery store. maybe the gas tank. And they were voting economics. They were voting on the price of eggs, and they weren't going back far enough like Donald Trump is. Because that's Donald Trump's backwards vision. It's to go back to 1924 and not to roll back to when eggs were $1 less or when gas was under $3 or whatever. I mean, Donald Trump isn't thinking about that. Donald Trump, in fact, is talking about raising tariffs 25% or raising prices through tariffs 25%. That's a pretty penny. Now you're complaining about the cost of eggs, the price of eggs, and that's how you voted. Imagine that new car you wanted, 25% more. The new car from China, Japan, from Asia. Imagine any product, 25% more. That's the Trump tax. And that's what people voted for. Now, only from exit polls do we know that Asian Americans, specifically Filipinos, were maybe 60-40, 60 Biden, or 60 Harris, 40 Trump. And that is still higher than it's been. We won't know for sure, but being part of that overall move from the Democrats to the Republicans, huge among Latinos, huge among African Americans, a lot more than it was, say, 4 years ago. And when you consider that this was one of the closest races, it is not a landslide. It is not a mandate. The popular vote was won by Trump by 2% at best. He did win a electoral college landslide, but that's no landslide. That's if you win the state. You look at the vote, popular vote. No mandate there. You look at the House and the Senate, no mandate there, really. It is a close, tight race. And Filipinos contributed to us going backwards. So that's what I'm sharing with the Filipino American National Historical Society today. Two things in 2024 that will be part of our history. And of course, it can be negated by what happens in 2025. That is when Filipinos take action, become active. I think in the last couple of weeks, I know a lot of people have been depressed with how this is doing bad. But no, there's still room for action. It's not time to give up. There's also, room for people to be active, take action on a local level. The feds are going to do what the feds do, but on a local level, you can have an impact. And things can look pretty good, which is why things generally look better in California than they would if you were in another state like Mississippi. Although if you were a red voter, you're just happy with Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. You're happy with the way things are there. But for Filipinos, most of them live in Hawaii, California. We have some solace in that locally, maybe the people we wanted got in. And locally, we can take the steps to make our lives better for all, the entire community. And that's really how it works, the grassroots effort from bottom up And I noticed new leaders coming up, new Asian American leaders, Filipinos coming up from different parts of the state, different parts of the country. The grassroots, that's where the power is, that's where the people are, and that's where the next leaders rise from. So even though there's some, in my sense, a hint of, I don't want to have being overly negative. I'm just saying there's a reality, but there's room for optimism. Some would say, "Oh, you're too damn optimistic." I think it's still the United States. It's still democracy. What I don't like is I don't like when people say, "I had a friend say, well, Emil, so are the Democrats going to let Hitler go in? Are they going to let Hitler take over?" Because I mean, you just said, Hitler. He's Hitler, and now you're going to let him just go in? Shouldn't we rise up and stop him? No, no, no. The Democrats who voted the way they didn't vote for Hitler. They voted for Harris or whatever, and they respect the law. And what you can say is, hey, you don't see people saying recount. The vote was rigged. You see the peaceful transfer of power, which is, if the shoe were on the other foot, If Trump was where Harris is, if it was totally reversed, it would not be the same. Trump would say, oh, they're lying. The vote was rigged. People were voting. Dead people were voting. And I think the best route from here is to see, okay, Donald Trump, we'll call your bluff. Show us what a bad guy you are. I think that may be the best thing. 25% tariff, you're a crazy, dumb guy who is apt to do anything, and that's why people respect you. You think that's why China, Putin respect you? Because they don't know what the hell you're doing. How you do anything? I'm down. No, all right, call your bluff. Are you really going to deport 11 million people at a cost of 11,000 per person? And then are you going to take the steps to take away the laws necessary to protect the due process rights of those people you deported? You're going to create that kind of chaos? Uh, he's going to get pushback, certainly from opponents. But we'll see how far Donald Trump will take it. Because for now, it's a lot of flux. All right, that's it for me. Um, Happy post Thanksgiving. Try to do nothing. I think that's what I try to do nothing, try to consume nothing, try to be happy. Try to be empty. I'm going to empty myself out and be happy. And I'm going to begin with a little loving kindness. Hey, go to Patreon, by the way. Check out our recordings and check out, you can communicate with me there. Patreon.com slash Emil Amok. Also on Substack, Caesar Collins at substack.com slash at Emil Amok. Thank you for being here. We do a little laughter yoga on Facebook. I'm going to post it. And you can communicate. And that's why I like to communicate. To be part of the community. Patreon.com slash Emil. Hey, we like to be mindful, like to do a little meditation. So the metta, METTA, loving kindness. where we try to clean up things before we act and send out love. Send out love. It's all about love, right? Send out and say, as I wish for you, I wish for you. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with you. Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Hey, till next time. Catch up with those past episodes. Listen to like radio. I don't know what you're doing. And check out my episode on the Dork Forest. Got a fun podcast. The Dork Forest. Emil Guillermo. All right. Till